Okay. I call to order this special meeting and executive session of the Scottsdale Unified School District. It is September 17th, 2019, and the time is 3:07 p.m. I will have a roll call starting from my far right.
Jan Michael Greenberg.
Sandy Kravitz. Allison Beckham.
And Patty Beckman. Board Member Perleberg is not present, but we do have a quorum. Okay, all rise. Vice President Beckham, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Board Member Beckham moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Greenberg seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. I move now to convene to executive session pursuant to ARS 38-431.03 A and 3. The board may vote to convene an executive session which will not be open to the public for discussion or consultation for legal advice with the governing board's attorney on an item or items that are listed on the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Beckham seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. We are now convened in executive session.
Barbara's coming at 5.
So I don't even know. Nancy, are we? Move you. I just didn't know if you wanted to. Okay. All right. I move to adjourn our executive session at 4:20. Do I have a second?
So moved, second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Executive session is adjourned. I am now reconvening our special meeting, and then I move to adjourn our special meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Special meeting is adjourned at 4:20 p.m. Okay, good evening. I call to order this regular meeting of the Scottsdale Unified School District. It is September 17th, and the time is 5:03 p.m. Please stand. Board Member Beckham, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will have a roll call starting from my far right.
Jan Michael Greenberg.
Sandy Kravitz.
Barbara Perleberg.
Allison Beckham.
And Patty Beckman. All board members are present, and we do have a quorum. Do any board members have any changes to the agenda? No? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Board Member Kravitz moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Beckham seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda is approved 5-0. We move now to our agenda item 4, students and staff recognition and celebrations. We call on Dr. Creekard.
Thank you, President Beckman, members of the board. We have 2 celebrations to share with you today, both involving an organization that is one of the district's most steadfast community supporters. Dr. Sackos, our Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education, is here to tell us about those recognitions.
Good afternoon, President Beckman, members of the board, Dr. Creekard, and Sandra. Our first celebration is actually a 5th anniversary of sorts. It was 5 years ago that the Bioscience Teacher Initiative was launched in the Scottsdale Unified School District. The goal of the program was and continues to be to provide SUSD educators with knowledge they would not otherwise receive about advances in the fields of medicine and bioscience that they can then turn the information into impart their science, algebra, engineering, robotics, physical education, environmental, and earth science students, not only instructional information, but also a career pathway. Who better to partner with than our very own nonprofit healthcare system, Honor Health? And who better to bring it all together than the teachers and the SUSD Foundation and the Family Farley Foundation? Would any Honor Health representatives, Nan Strohmeyer from the SUSD Foundation and Mr. Stuart Farley from the Farley Family Charitable Foundation, please join me at the podium? Next, I would like to invite up our 2019 Bioscience Teacher Initiative participants to join us. Raymond Miller, Scott Mine, Kelly Allen, Sean Collier, and Trish Bordonaro from Saguaro High School. There we go. Come on up, everybody. And Ms. Strohmeyer will get your certificates when we go out for a photo opportunity. Bert Tavaldi, Yavina Mamina, Chayito Hernandez Flores from Mojave Middle School. Scott Dees from Coronado High School. For 3 days in late July, these teachers were part of an intense program designed especially for them by Honor Health's Vice President for Research and Research Institute, Chief Executive Dr. Mark Slater of Academics and Biostatistics Director Dr. Kevin Goslin, and Oncology Early Detection Scientific Project Manager Dr. Suden Haig. These teachers learned about the day in a life of medical researchers, the challenges, the research, the professions, and career paths of medical scientists and health humanitarians. Imagine taking that knowledge into a classroom of knowledge-hungry high school and middle school students. I got the chills. None of this would happen without our engaged wellness partner, Honor Health. And it looks like our representative was not able to be here tonight. The Farley Foundation specifically Mr. Stuart Farley, and our very own SUSD Foundation, in which Ms. Strohmeyer is here to represent. As a former educator herself, Ms. Strohmeyer understands what matters to teachers and how to make local resources work for SUSD. Nan, would you like to say a few words?
I'll never miss an opportunity to say a few words, but just to piggyback on what Dr. Sakos has mentioned, this initiative started with a partnership with TGen. And they asked for 5 teachers then, and every year since then, we have had 10 teachers involved, 10 different teachers. So the only, everybody, all corporations, businesses, and especially school districts love data. What we try to do with these teachers is learn not only about honor health and all the important aspects of that, but to also share with them all the areas that they need support in to make honor health and all its facilities run, such as HR, such as marketing, such as community outreach, such as, so it's not just doctors and nurses, even though those are extremely important, it's every other area of expertise that is needed. So what I encourage each group as teachers to not only learn about the honor health and the healthcare system in that, but also to make relationships with the doctors, with the expertise in their different fields, to use them to bring into their classroom or to Skype with, or whatever use they see in their teaching approach in the classroom. So throughout that, if we look at, there have been 40 teachers that have been involved in this since it began, since the beginning of it. It has touched almost 40,000 students, equating to 150 students a semester, give or take some, times 2, times those multiple years. So you can see what an effect we have had, and the Farley Foundation has also had that effect on many, many, many students and hopefully other teachers. So thank you so much for giving your time this summer and being involved in this opportunity. So thank you.
Miss Norman's like, follow the script, Melissa, follow the script. All right, we have another great celebration, including the SUSD Foundation, and that is our Quest for Excellence mini grant program. I'd like to ask the following people to join us at the podium for this celebration. Bronwyn Maxwell from Special Education Panda Program. Gary Griggs, our very own Scottsdale Online Counselor and also Unitown representative for all 5 high schools. Marge Rayberg, Executive Director of Special Education. Lynn Brachtel, Navajo Elementary. And our dynamic principals, Osmussen, Prudensky, and Thuman, respectively, for Mojave, Tonalea, and Ingleside Middle School. Marilyn Williams from Tavon Elementary. Stacy Green from Ingleside Middle School. Diana Davis from Tavon Elementary. Scott Dees, who was just recognized and I had to chase out the door, from Coronado High School. Robin Wynn from Laguna Elementary. The objectives of the Quest for Excellent mini grants includes to support the foundation and district's goal of increasing student learning and to provide annual grants that enhance learning experiences that foster academic development and inspire teachers and administrators to experiment with the tools and techniques that go beyond conventional textbooks and school district funding. The recipients of this year's SUSD Foundation mini grants represent many different interests and types of students, from special education to gifted to high school leaders to robotics to Title I, kindergarten, and pre-K. We applaud their initiative for seeking these grants, which range from $240 to $5,000 to provide extra curriculum, physical activities, and thought-inspiring classroom materials. Again, I'm getting the chills. All to support SUSD students. Thank you, Nan, from the bottom of my heart, who's been a part of this for a very long time, and the SUSD Foundation for the profound opportunities you provide for our teachers, students, and programs. Thank you. Okay, and I'm going to put you in charge of the certificates. Okay. You guys go out first for the lot. Okay. Okay, not about me.
Okay.
Many thanks. Many thanks to the Farley Family Foundation, Honor Health, and the SUSD Foundation for making these opportunities available to our SUSD teachers. Everyone benefits from your generosity. Thank you. Moving on to my comments now, if I
Please.
may. President Beckman. We were pleased to learn recently that SUSD has received grant money from the state of Arizona to supplement our gifted funding for this school year. The grant is part of the state's annual support of gifted education programs for identified K-12 students. The just under $17,000 will allow us to provide 1, vocabulary and grammar materials to support gifted learners in both the Comprehensive Gifted Program and the PAC program. 2, reading curriculum materials designed for gifted learners in the CGP kindergarten and first grade classrooms. 3, integrated reading, writing, social studies materials in document-based questions, or DBQs, for 3rd through 8th grade CGP students. 4th, a College of William and Mary classical literature unit for 4th and 5th grade students. And last, a social and emotional learning opportunity for students, teachers, and parents with local clinical psychologist Dr. Laura Wingers, whose work specializes in meeting the needs of gifted students. Congratulations to our new Gifted Education Director, Karen Brown, Teaching and Learning Executive Director, Cheryl Redner, and Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services, Dr. Kim Guerin, for securing this additional funding for our gifted students and programs. Thank you. I am also pleased to report that the SUSD Finance Department has received recognition from the Chicago-based Government Finance Officers Association for its fiscal year 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. The Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting is the highest form of recognition in governmental accounting and financial reporting, and represents a significant achievement by the district's finance department. The Certificate of Achievement is due in no small part to the leadership of our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Jeff Gadd, who is ably assisted by Finance Director Shannon Crozier. So we're going to do a little impromptu celebration now, and I would like Shannon for you to please come forward. One of the things that we've been doing this year is giving a challenge coin to people who make special contributions to Scottsdale Unified School District. Shannon, thank you very much. That's yours. Thank So again, thank you, Shannon, Jeff, and the rest of the SUSD finance crew for your hard work and diligence overseeing our finances. The 2002 National Merit Scholarship season is upon us. We were informed last week that we have 16 seniors who are semifinalists in the 65th Annual National Merit Scholarship Program. They were chosen because of their performance during their junior year on the PSAT, National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. They now have the opportunity to continue in the competition for 7,600 scholarships across the country, worth an estimated $31 million. Award notifications begin in April. Next, I would like to report to you on new initiatives that we have undertaken this school year. Last Monday, the Superintendent/Teacher Liaison Committee met for the first time. The committee is comprised of teacher representatives from each of the district's 28 school sites, and I have to say it was wonderful to meet with these teachers who are leaders on their school campuses and listen to their questions and learn of their concerns. I have some homework to do as a result, and I look forward to meeting with this group again in November. There's a whole lot of communicating going on in SUSD. 3 weeks ago at Saguaro High School, I hosted the first of my Coffee with Creekard events. A fair-sized group, over 30 people, parents and neighbors from across the district were in attendance, and we talked about all kinds of things. That is exactly what the coffees are for. I have notes from that particular meeting and reviewing them weekly to make sure that I am on task to respond and to do some of the things that we agreed to at that meeting. The next coffee is at Arcadia High School on Wednesday, October 23rd at 8 a.m. Speaking of meetings this week, Mr. Jeff Gadd, CFO, will host the third of 5 information meetings on the November 5th Maintenance and Operations Override election. The meeting takes place Thursday at Saguaro High School at 6:30 p.m. in the community room. The final 2 meetings are next week, Tuesday, September 24th at Desert Mountain High School and Thursday, September 26th at Arcadia High School. These are opportunities for residents of our school district to get the facts about the override, what district activities the override funds support, why we are asking that it be continued, how much it will cost, and answer any other factual questions the public may have. The override election will be conducted by mail only. There will not be any polling places. You must be a registered voter and live within SUSD boundaries to receive a ballot. It's our understanding that the ballots will be mailed in early October. Lastly, roughly 800 middle school students played baseball and volleyball in the annual Fall Sports Festival on September 7th. The large group of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders occupied all 8 of the baseball fields at Chaparral Park and 3 of our high school gymnasiums. 51 volleyball matches were played and 27 baseball games. By all accounts, the festival was a huge success and the kids had fun. Thank you for the opportunity to update the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Creekard. Okay, we move now to public comments. Per policy BEDB, we will take comment on non-agenda consent items only at this time. For items listed on the agenda as information discussion items or action items, the public will be afforded an opportunity to comment on those as they come up for discussion. Sandra, do I have all the cards? Yes, you do. Okay. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per member of the public. Time may not be forfeited or gifted to another member of the public. The board requests that the members of the audience observe rules of general conduct and decorum that will allow for effective use of the meeting time. And our first public comment comes from David Hanlon.
My name's Dave Hanlon. I've taught in SUSD for 25 years, and I'd like to introduce myself as the Vice President of the Scottsdale Education Association. As Vice President, I feel that I was elected to be the voice of all teachers. And the most important issue to all teachers is the reinstatement of the teacher-employee agreement. We will not stop fighting for it. In general, teachers don't like to make public comments in governing board meetings. We don't want to make waves or seek headlines. We just want to teach in our classrooms. But when we see something that isn't fair for students or for our fellow teachers, we will stand up for what's right. It wasn't right that the TEA was taken away by Dr. Birdwell. It's not right that for 50 years, teachers and district administration worked collaboratively on the TEA, and then one person comes along and throws it aside. Dozens of superintendents and dozens of governing board members over the past 50 years agreed that teachers and administration working together was best for students. I understand that the previous superintendent claimed that the TEA prevented her from doing her job. I'd argue that any superintendent could not do his or her job without the collaboration of teachers. I'd like to thank Dr. Creekard for coming back to SUSD and for working with teachers. Thank you for listening to teachers. He probably doesn't remember me, but in the late 90s, I got my master's in educational leadership, and I was in one of his classes. I didn't go into administration, but I still practice what you taught me. I have my MBWA, management by walking around, and I try to be a leader in education. In order for SEA and for me to lead the teachers in SUSD, we need to ensure the rights of those teachers. We appreciate Dr. Creekard, but we don't know who the next superintendent will be. We don't know if he or she will be as supportive of teachers as he is. The best way to ensure teachers can do their job of teaching students is to reinstate the TEA, to reinstate meet and confer, to reinstate the SEA president's release time, and to have teacher representatives on all district committees. In my opinion, the district is not as effective in its core purpose of teaching students without teachers being partners in the decision-making process. I'd like to thank the governing board members. You have a tough job. I've been to a lot of governing board meetings for the past 3+ years. People don't tend to give public comments when things are going well and say thanks. But I'm looking forward to the day that I can stand up here and thank you for supporting teachers, because you reinstated not only the TEA, but also the spirit of collaboration that went along with it and the respect teachers feel by having it. Please put yourself in our shoes. How would you feel if your rights were taken away from you? Teachers tend to quietly go about their work, and their work is among the most important work being done. They don't ask for much. We are asking for the TEA back, and I hope you reconsider your stance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Linda Schlenker.
All right. Hi there. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I would like to thank our Arcadia principal, Mr. Stevens, members of the governing board, and Dr. Creekard for continuing the conversations that we've been having to work towards repairing Arcadia. I have a few requests that I'd like for you to consider. I'd like for you to consider to plan a public forum to discuss the enrollment policies, both in district and open enrollment. I'm also requesting that you consider moving the STEP SCORE program to a campus that has room to accommodate it, and allow Arcadia the 2 classrooms and the bus we so desperately need at this time, as well as take one more step to decrease the traffic problems that we're having in our neighborhoods. I know enrollment is closed this year, but going forward, we're asking for enrollment to coordinate with staffing and scheduling. The models we looked at look that it is done no later than mid-spring. And I want to ask, are we accepting open enrollment for next year, either in district or out of district? I know we're closed this year. If we are, I know you all start staffing scheduling on day 40, if I'm not mistaken, and we're already on day 30 without any real clear definition on what the enrollment's going to be for next year. We're asking for a specific timeline on a number of these things when they will be accomplished, such as enrollment policies traffic school zone signs being put up, all the different things we've been discussing. I know we're talking like we're working on it, but could we get target dates to really have definition for this? And I too look forward to standing up here when our numbers are where they ought to be at, our class sizes are where they ought to be at, and thanking you for repairing our school. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Tricia Longnecker?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. So here we are a month later, and Arcadia still has major issues, and we even have more issues. So I'm just going to go through my list so I don't run out of time again, and hopefully you take notes and we get something done. Got it. Overcrowding. We have 140 more students this year. We have over 500 freshmen. We have more freshmen than Desert Mountain on their huge campus. Schedule changes happen 4 weeks into school. I just found out last week we have 16 teachers with 6/5 contracts. We had 5 last year. And you know what problem this causes for teachers, students, and subs. It's hard to find subs. Lack of parking. Can we please move the parking lot remodel to fall or winter break? Many traffic issues. No school zone signs or left turn signal on our entrance at 44th Street. So my question is, when will you have the traffic study complete? When will a new open enrollment policy be implemented? And when will you define capacity numbers taking many factors into account? Faculty. We need funding for additional social worker, counselor, receptionist, registrar, and attendants. Right now, we are without a registrar, and we have a part-time attendance person. Neither are bilingual, so I ask that you find people for our school that are bilingual to work and can speak to 50% of our parents, and also they need an increase of pay so we can find these people. It's a disservice to our students and our counselors. They have way too many kids to take care of. And our SOR officer, he needs to get out of his car. We have over 1,900 students in a small campus, and he sits in his car all day long. Facility. Maintenance gets nothing done on our campus. We are down 1 maintenance person. We have an old AC that is not holding up. It appears to have disgusting mold or something coming out of the back filters. Our classrooms are leaking, and some rooms are freezing, some have no AC, and teachers are jumping around into other classrooms. They're using Mount Olympus, they're using the library. My son had to move in his class today because he was getting splashed on by the bucket that's catching water from the ceiling. It's missing panels. It's disgusting. The homecoming dance. I've had 5 parents call me today, and students ask me if we're going to have AC. They're afraid it's going to be too hot by that evening, that no one's going to want to stay at the dance, and they're doing a lot of work to put it on. So hopefully they're taking that into account. Our stairwells are unsafe and corroded. We have problems with our activity buses. We have 3. Coronado has 4 with half the students. We have termites in the auditorium. We have lack of seating during lunch. We have faded directional and parking signs. Our landscape looks ridiculous. 140 students more this year. I think that's 1.5 million. We say no to Yes for Children till we see some change.
Okay, thank you. Joe Gusak? Gusick?
Madam President, fellow board members, Superintendent Dr. Creekart, all Scottsdale Unified staff, parents, taxpayers, and last but not least, students, my name's Joe Gusick. I'm the lovable, slightly annoying American. I'm the education lyrics. From time to time, I show up. From time to time, I send emails. I wanted to share with you something from the state appropriations report, what our state elected officials get to see. 5 years ago, they got to see a report which estimated that the total state enrollment for districts for FY 2018 was supposed to be almost 939,000 students. They missed it by a lot. They say that it was 913,558. That's 20,000 different student counts. That means employees are being taken out. you know I like to speak to you about the Arizona State retirement system. I'm very passionate about it, and one day we're going to return it to 100%. In those reports, what it showed in this one showed that in 2025, the contribution rate would be 9%. Wow, a big difference than what you see today. What it projects for the next decade is well into the 12%, 12.5% range. Once again, I will go to the board in a month or so when they go look at the actuals. I'm going to ask them to stress test this stuff. We got to get this right. We can't keep yin-yanging all of you all over the place. And obviously, you can hear needs are out there. So I share this with you not to make people look bad, but this is how I advocate for you. I go down to the Capitol and I show them their numbers. I show them their projections so that when they go and say, what's the number? It's justified. I showed them the Wisconsin rate, 6.55%. And oh, by the way, I spoke to the Arizona State Board and said to them, they're actually raising it by 0.2 or 20 basis points. Why? Because they're at 100% and they want to stay at 100% because then it keeps it in a range of a reasonable contribution rate. One day I would like to return that money all back to you. But today, we can't. So with that, and clearly in mind, and I know I only got 30 seconds left, I ask your community to continue your override. Continue it because there is an absolute reason to ensure that there's the ample dollars there to fund you correctly as you are needed. So I thank you for what you do. I know you take a lot of heat, and the last time I was here, you were taking a lot of heat. So once again, I do appreciate each and every one of you, and it's nice to see new faces on the board. So thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, we are now moving on to our information and discussion item 7A, our estimated excess capacity for the Saguaro Learning Community. Dr. Hagiot?
Good evening, President Beckman, members of the board, Dr. Creekard, and Sandra. Today, Dr. Sakos and I bring you an informational item regarding excess capacity for the Saguaro Learning Community. I'd like to take a few seconds to thank those that have supported us, like Dennis and his team of interns, Theo, Altnew, and Gatlin Farrington. So when we come to you here is because we have policy JFB. And open enrollment requires for the superintendent to bring forward the estimates for excess capacity for board approval. Prior to December 1st, you will have the opportunity to receive the estimates of excess capacity for each learning community. And I think I manned this one. Let's see. And there's the policy that we are speaking to. Dr. Sakos will share with us the criteria and the definitions.
Good afternoon. So as you can see up there, in terms of classroom capacity, we consider those classrooms that are 750 square feet and above. Program capacity, the example here for elementary, is program capacity is calculated by the staffing standard for each grade level multiplied by the number of sections at each grade level. So if you have 4 elementary classrooms, you multiply that by the staffing standard, which is in 2 slides ahead of us, and that is what you get for your capacity there, which in this case, 26 times 4 for the first grade example here would be 104 students. For secondary, we consider program or what I'm calling utilization capacity, and it's calculated by taking the physical capacity of the campus and multiplying it by 0.85. That 85% factor takes into consideration a teacher's preparation period in which, or their prep period, in which there are no students in the classroom during that time. In terms of program capacity, it's important to know that along with that 750 square foot criteria, we also exclude a number of rooms when looking at program capacity. So while they physically are there on the campus, this list here is rooms that we do not calculate to determine program capacity. That is office spaces, libraries, workrooms, computer labs, cafeteria, and oftentimes computer labs are occupied by students in e-learning and credit recover, but we do not calculate those. Rooms used for English language learners and also rooms used for special education students, and then athletic spaces such as locker rooms, weight rooms, storage, etc. As mentioned, here is the staffing standards that we have for each grade level. You'll see that it's different from kinder through 5, grade 6 through 12 is at 33, and high school science 9 through 12 is at 32.
Thank you, Dr. Sakos. And here you have the program capacity, and for Kiva, it shows that we have excess capacity of 234 students. Navajo, and it's important to know that this is at Granite Reef, has an excess capacity of 221 students, and it is important also to note that there is an additional building at Navajo, and it's not currently intended for classroom use. So if that purpose were to change, then we know that Navajo will increase its program capacity. Also, we have facilities working with our principal, Matt Patzloff, to make sure that they're able to finalize that program capacity as they reconfigure some of the needs for Navajo at Granite Reef. Pueblo has an excess capacity of 286 students, and Mojave has an excess capacity of 20 students, and Saguaro High School an excess capacity of 523 students. And so for us, we'd like to offer conclusions that we do have program capacity and will continue to use that program capacity to determine availability at each site for open enrollment. As written in our policy, we know that the superintendent may estimate any necessary reductions in capacity for each school, grade level, and/or program. If a reduction is necessary, the procedure for that reduction of open enrollment will follow the priority categories set forth in reverse order. For elementary, all elementary schools within the Saguaro learning community have excess capacity in most grade levels. Therefore, schools can continue to welcome students and their families. Each school will address requests based on availability in each grade level or program. For Pueblo specifically, we have the dual language program, and we know that language proficiency is important, and in using the 50-50 model, we know that right now that is part of the reason why we have low enrollment in some of the grade levels, as students cannot access the program after first grade. So for us, it's important to consider options such as the K-8 dual language school to provide that continuity that allows for students to be bilingual, biliterate, and bicultural in English and Spanish. Kiva, over time, I give you 3 years here, has demonstrated to increase their enrollment, and so we look at the age of the facility and we want to consider Kiva to be next school to be rebuilt and renovated. When we're looking at Navajo, we know that they continue to enhance their STEAM program as a signature program, and although enrollment will be reviewed on November of 2019 as part of the growth plan commitment that was established, we know that due to the fire on August 22nd, 2018, Navajo has been placed in a situation where it's at a disadvantage to grow its enrollment. So for us, allowing Navajo to grow their program at the renovated Navajo campus for a year will provide a better idea regarding whether it is able to sustain itself. Now for secondary, Saguaro High School we know has excess capacity at Mojave, and Mojave Middle School has limited excess capacity. So we welcome our families, and we want to make sure that We know that each request is based on that availability and at each grade level. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Dr. Hoggy-Hot. Do I have any questions from board members?
I have my question.
Board Member Kravitz.
You note on the slide showing Kiva on the capacity study where it showed the three columns, that Navajo is an additional building that is not currently intended for classrooms. What is it intended for? Because when we met, I was told there were 15 open rooms for an additional 435
That is one
students.
option that we have, but there hasn't been any determination as we continue to talk to Dennis. He is sharing that that is a possibility, but it could be used depending on what the board chooses to do for other purposes. So we didn't want to limit anything.
Okay.
Any other questions? Board Member Greenberg.
For these conclusions and recommendations, some of these suggest actions that I imagine would, I guess, have to come before the governing board for approval. Is there a timeline for when these recommendations, or how does this work?
I'm expecting to, unless I hear otherwise from you tonight, to bring at the next board meeting, October 1st board meeting, a recommendation on Kiva.
Thanks.
So I wanted to know, thank you for all the time you put into this. I know it's not an exact science and it's cumbersome in the process. With regard to program capacity, I know that you spent a lot of time. The K-5 level is a little bit more straightforward,
Yes.
right? You can go classroom by classroom. You know if you're full and you have a wait list and you have 3 kids that are on your wait list that are in 3rd grade, and you have 3 spaces in a 3rd grade classroom, boom. It's fairly simple and straightforward. High school gets a little bit trickier, and same with middle school because the schedules are changing. So I know that as you get kind of into that getting closer to full level, there's many considerations. And because we do have Arcadia here tonight, et cetera, and I know you do consider this, and I would like us to keep it in mind that as we do get closer to full, that there are those extra stressors in a school with regard to parking and lunch, and I know we have to keep that all in consideration as we look to say a school is full, quote unquote. It's not the time tonight. We're talking about the Saguaro learning community and just the capacity itself. But as we move forward into discussing that open enrollment policy, et cetera, those are areas I'd like to keep in mind because this is a completely separate issue defining the program capacity for a school. Then it's other than open enrollment and allowable enrollment in the school, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Board Member Beckham.
Thank you for putting this together. Will this information be used for those next steps for marketing the schools, or looking at programming within the schools, or looking at how students move from elementary, middle to high school? Or is this strictly just for a point in time for December 1 to be able to say that we have additional capacity, that we can now take open enrollment, and we will be rolling out that open enrollment schedule later, but
Specific to the policy, yes. However, we always take opportunities when we get data such as this one so that we can continue to market our schools. So directly for this purpose, it'll be around excess capacity or excess program capacity, but we're always looking to see how can we increase our enrollment and how can we advertise the programs that we currently have that make our schools such quality place. So we use it for many, many other purposes, but today it's specific to program capacity.
because one thing just kind of steps out, or pops out at you, and that's that we have room for 500 additional students, yet the feeder school, which is the middle school, only has additional for 20. So I would like to see maybe in the future some type of written plan of how are we going to be growing this complex, yet we don't have the room in our middle school to grow to the growth that we have in our high school. Thank you.
And expanding upon that, I know we had that last study that showed the migration patterns in the district, and I think you all are in talks right now because they're all obviously puzzle pieces as the next learning communities get addressed, Coronado and Arcadia, and who is feeding to who and why, right? And that said a lot, that last migration page, and who is going where and why. One thing to note, as you bring up Kiva, I found it interesting, and I mentioned to Dr. Creekard earlier, that Kiva has out-of-district open enrollment of 78 students, and that's considerable considering Kiva is not a border school. It's not sitting on, for instance, the border of Phoenix or the border of Tempe. People are driving through our district to get to that school from out of our district. But that kind of study, as we move forward, I think will speak volumes as we consider enrollment and what we're trying to emphasize in the way of programs and marketing, for sure. Board Member Greenberg? Board Member Perleberg?
Oh, I just have a question for clarity. So we will be taking a look at the other 4 complexes all before December, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So just kind of little one at a time. I just wanted to make sure every complex knew we hadn't forgotten them and just focus on Saguaro. So, all right, that's all I'll say for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Greenberg?
Just building on what Board President Beckman just said, with in-district open enrollment, do we ever ask or analyze as parents and students come in why they've chosen another school than the one do we have any analysis of that? For example, I know with some schools, especially after the fire, the statement was made, well, some of these schools are getting boosted enrollment because they're waiting for their home school to be rebuilt. I mean, do we have any projections for that of whether those types of things are true or whether these parents are choosing Pueblo because that's where they want their child to be, or choosing Kiva or Saguaro and so on? Does that make sense?
So we talked about this today in Cabinet because at the beginning, just before the school year began, we looked at a one-page survey instrument for parents who are enrolling their students as well as for those that are exiting our district to get that information. And we just talked about, and so the principals in the audience will be hearing from their supervisors to what are your data from those forms as we begin to look at that. We are also having an update this fall, I believe November, from Rick Brammer of Applied Economics to update. I mean, first of all, we want to give him the chance to take a look at the changes that we've had and see what that does to his number, because there are some changes from what he projected. So those are two of the things that we will be doing regarding that gathering input. We are also going to send out a survey to Coronado Complex parents, asking them to give us input on several different scenarios of what to do in that complex as we do the study there as well, so that we can make recommendations to you based on hopefully a large number of parents rather than the 1 or 2 people that we hear from on a regular basis, so that we know that what they are telling us, we verify what they are telling us, or we find out something new. But we are going to survey the Coronado parents for that. And that will be, again, results in November after a couple of key events in November.
All right, yeah, thank you for that. Just because the entrance and exit surveys, I think, can provide a lot of useful information. And what I don't want as we move forward with these is to be given recommendations that we then discuss and we're all on board on, and all of a sudden somebody comes up with some niche argument as to why the numbers we see are not really the numbers
And
we
we also,
see.
we keep track of open enrollments from in-district as well as open enrollment from out of district. We
Right.
keep track of both of those numbers.
Yeah.
Those are telling issues. A lot of it usually has to do with programs available at the school that students are moving there for, but sometimes it's a matter of convenience for parents as well, close to a work site, on their way to work, or something like that as well. So the more information we can gather, the better, and we're looking at a lot of different data points.
Great, thank you.
Board Member Kravitz?
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you have a copy of the applied economics study?
I do.
Okay, well, I think if you look at page 51, where it talks about school enrollment by attendance area, that may be of especially interest to you, because it shows what students from their home or from their neighborhood school are attending other schools in our district. And usually it's due to programs, and it is, at least in my experience and that of other parents.
Yes, and that is the form the board president was referencing, and that's what I'm asking is, do we have the data that says that they're choosing for program or choosing for other environmental factors? That's all I was, yeah. Thank you.
Any further questions for Dr. Sakos or Dr. Hagihat? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we move now to our next public comment. Do I have any public comment on information and discussion item, the one we just heard from Dr. Sakos and Dr. Hagihat? Nope, no cards? All right. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Board Member Greenberg makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is that Kravitz?
Yep, Kravitz.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. The consent agenda is approved. Okay, do I have any public comment on action items that are listed on the agenda? No, no cards. Okay, we move now to our first action item, 11A. Are there any questions or discussion on the recommendation for the approval of the revisions to the school year calendar for 2020-2021? Any questions or discussion from board members? Board member? Board Member Beckham?
I would just like to, with this school calendar, I understand a survey went out to the teachers. So I wanted to thank the administration for sending out the survey so that we could understand what the teachers preferred, as well as approximately over 80% of the teachers responded. So I wanted to thank the teachers for responding. With that came quite a few comments that we were given, and I was able to read through that comments, and I wanted to thank the teachers once again for voicing their opinions and their thoughts and their concerns, and actually some very good suggestions. So one of the items I wanted to just find out is that what the administration will be doing with those 200 plus comments that came with that survey.
Well, we have two different committees that are being planned to look at things. One is a professional development committee who will look at the comments that have to do with professional development, and we will have teacher representatives, administrative representatives on the professional development committee, chaired by Dr. Guerin and Mrs. Redner. And secondly, next fall, there will be another calendar committee because we've run out of calendars with next year. And Dr. Guerin, being the rookie on the staff, was chosen to run the calendar committee. And so she will be seeking teachers, parents, administrators, all stakeholders to serve on that committee and looking at, and so I think many of those comments about the calendar in general will also be useful to that process.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
But that was a good point.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve action item 11A, the approval of revisions to the school year calendar for 2020-2021?
So moved.
Board Member Greenberg makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Beckham seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. We move now to action item 11B, the approval of the continuation of the contract with McPherson Jacobson for the superintendent search. And I move to table this action item 11B until our next special meeting on October 1st, so that all board members may have the opportunity to speak to McPherson Jacobson if they so wish. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Board Member Perleberg seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Or, I'm sorry, Jan?
Yeah,
Board Member Greenberg?
I would vote no on that, but
Okay.
yeah.
Board Member Greenberg opposes. Motion carries 4-1. Okay, moving now to action item 11C. Are there any questions or discussion on the approval of quarterly expectations and priorities for the superintendent for the second quarter of 2019-20? Yep. Board Member Kravitz.
Is the superintendent going to comment on them since he sent us an email this week?
When called upon, yes.
Dr.
Thank
Krikar.
you. Thank you. First of all, a quick overview of the first quarter priorities. District facility plans for each learning community was the first one, and you saw the first presentation this evening. And we believe, and at the request of board members, that we can get the others done yet this fall, now that we have the template in place and we have worked through what it looks like when we start walking the schools and talking to principals, that we can do that. It is important. At any rate, we have to come to you with all of the schools as to whether they are open or closed to open enrollment. Some of them are pretty clear. We know Tonalea has been full, and I would probably say Mojave, and I have made the commitment to Arcadia that they would remain closed to open enrollment for next year, following our policy and the superintendent allowing a different level. So we believe we can get those done for you by December 1st, which would mean the second board meeting in November in order to meet the December 1st. If we can't get all of that done, we'll let you know, but I've been assured by my crack staff that they can get it done. So secondly, marketing update for the district growth schools. So I shared with the board by email on Friday the report from our communications and marketing department, and for each school there are 17 to 20 different events and projects that communications and marketing shared with schools or provided support for schools, and such things as news releases, Anasazi, the IBMYP news release and governing board comments, focusing on that, visit of the campus by members of the communications and marketing team, and help with articles in the Progress and the Scottsdale Independent, even a drone and site photography to help give us a better visual when we are advertising the school, and for people to connect with the school. Navajo were the most, because there was a lot of support for Navajo in letters going out to the families to keep them updated, especially last fall, but also specially designed, now enrolling, schedule a tour banner for Navajo, and also at each school school marketing box filled with marketing information and delivered with accompanying presentation. The Scottsdale Progress story on Navajo restoration, and we work collaboratively with the media on those stories. Hohokam and Yavapai, there were stories about the combining of those two schools for this year, and work done, like, such as banners saying we've moved, and to be able to put on the fence banner designed for Hohokam. The specially designed now enrolling schedule a tour banner for Hohokam Yavapai. Echo Canyon was featured in our first Showcase magazine with their garden and the project around that. Also, again, a banner branded for Echo Canyon, now enrolling, schedule a tour. We did that for all of these schools. So it has been I think a pretty amazing effort of trying to market those schools. The enrollment is and they also added the communication and marketing department called Tier 1 schools, so they added a couple of other schools that were smaller, had lower enrollment, but weren't on the growth plan, and they're helping them in like ways. The enrollment at Echo Canyon is up slightly. The organization and education that's taking place at Hohokam Yavapai is great to see. The way that was put together, great kudos to Principal Chuck Rentala and the staff of both of those schools coming together. And so the stories on that combination is positive. Anasazi's enrollment is up. Thank you to Principal Waldron and her work on the primary IB program and meeting with her parents and really providing support for new people who have moved into the community to come to Anasazi. Navajo, as we said in the presentation on facilities, is been at a handicap this year because of the fire and the move to Oak, but they are holding their own, and I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm really proud of the way Principal Patzloff and the staff at Navajo performed on the AG merit this year, considering their situation. They grew in 4th and 5th grade, down a little bit in 3rd grade, but grew in 4th and 5th grade, and not a lot, but given the circumstances, I think that's very important. And we have a great deal of work on working with them to develop further the STEAM program at Navajo, and those are a lot of that comes from that they were able to maintain through the efforts of our marketing department. The third was solutions or different choices for district auditing. After conversations with individual board members, I believe that we are in a situation where we should post a position for an organizational audit, looking at organizational efficiency. Mr. Gadd has in his bag of old tricks, he has experience with this, and says that he thinks he does have a job description that we can easily edit and make applicable for this and move forward on that. And that's why I put in the next quarters is to make a recommendation to you on that with a posting of that position. And then the last was the update on the thematic goals, including the district metrics. The district metrics will be discussed and will be updated by Cindy Bachna at the October 1st meeting. That's the first day of the second quarter, so it's not really first quarter, I guess, but that's when the data is available. All the data is not available now. We'll be doing that. Also on the district thematic goals, I would highlight two of the defining objectives that I think has been especially important in the first quarter. One is get the right leaders, and I look at the fact that we had only 4 vacancies in the principal's positions, this year, and 2 of those due to retirement and 2 of them due to moves to the district office. I think that stability is very important. There has been a strong move to evaluate those principals last year, and I think we have upgraded our evaluation process, but more on that later. And the second of the defining objectives, where I think that we have done an excellent job in this first quarter, is the student-focused facility design and plan. And I look particularly at Cherokee and that process in designing that school, and the start of the HOCOM design process as well, and the way the architects have worked on taking input from families on what is best for their students, and input from the vision teams, which consists of many of the teachers on the staff at HOCOM. They especially had to look at their instructional designs as to what the building would look like, and they've come up with a very student-focused design for that facility. So we are continuing to move on all of these. The thing about these first quarter priorities is that they don't end come September 30th. We'll continue moving forward on those. And so as a suggestion to you for the second quarter, I've said continuation of the program facility plans, as we've mentioned, the excess capacity studies for each of them. We are going to look at the administrative evaluation process. Again, that will be part of a committee that probably Dr. Bowman and Dr. Guerin will work on together with administrative input to develop the administrative evaluation process that coincides correctly with our offer of contracts, so that's in a way that makes a little bit more sense. So more on that later. And then thirdly, recommendations on the school growth plans. In November, in the second meeting of November is the 1-year anniversary, and so we will come forward with recommendations on those 4 schools at that time in the second quarter. And the last is to come to you with the internal auditing recommendation.
Board Member Kravitz.
Thank you. On June 25th of this year, we had a rather robust discussion about the question of internal or external auditor. So I have a question. At the time, Dr. Creekard, you mentioned, because I looked at the video today and I'm paraphrasing, that we would not be able to find someone qualified at the pay that we were offering that would combine financial and business effectiveness that we're looking for. So and at the time, Mr. Gadd, you had said that you thought an external auditor would be the way to go, and that there were probably 2 companies, I think, that you said could do the job. So I would like to know what has changed from June 25th to today.
My mind?
Okay, I'd like a little more specific since this was a surprise to me. So, and then I have some more questions as well.
So, in listening to the board conversation and subsequent discussions with individual board members, as well as in cabinet, the idea of an auditor that is solely a financial auditor is redundant with our audit done every year by an external firm, and I liked the idea, the more I thought of it, of having somebody looking at our processes, making sure that our everything that we've been looking at this year, but we need to continue to look at, from human resources to finance to purchasing, maybe transportation. There are a lot of processes that I think we need to look at, and make sure also have an an outside sort of or new set of eyes looking at whether our actions and strategies are consistent with our policies, so that we follow that and make corrections as is necessary there. So it really was a matter of looking at listening to the discussion and talking in cabinet and to some of you that I believe that that to me is what is most needed right now in terms of auditing.
To whom will the auditor report to? The superintendent or the governing board?
Well, I did watch a year and a half ago the discussion that the then board had about that. I've always believed that the auditor should report to the superintendent, but given what some questions about that you had at that time, I understand the question. I still believe if a superintendent that you hire to sit here will be a person who wants to improve the district by listening closely to that extra set of eyes that an auditor provides and the changes that need to be made. And ultimately, any policy changes would come to you, of course. But that's what I believe, but you are the board, and when we post that position, and if you decide as a group that the auditor would report to you directly, that's something that could be discussed at that time, certainly.
I believe we previously had an auditor when Dr. Barrissey and Dr. Peterson were superintendents.
I think Michelle has.
Board Member Greenberg, Ms. Marshall.
Well, this is part of his goals, so, and there was a change in what we had discussed, so that's why I'm asking the question. Do we need to meet in executive session?
Legal advice as to whether you're going off topic?
Well, to discuss the auditor, because if we do, then that's what.
You would not be able to go into a legal advice session tonight to discuss the auditor, but we can put something on another agenda to have that discussion. And you can talk about the auditor in terms of Dr. Picard's quarterly goals. And I apologize, I didn't at the beginning of the conversation, but just want to make sure we're not getting into the pros and cons of actually having an auditor.
Okay, well, I have a lot of questions about internal or external auditors, so if you're saying I should wait and we should have a separate meeting about that or discussion, that's fine, and we can take the recommendation about the internal auditor off of this, off of the expectations, priorities for the superintendent.
You can talk about taking it off or revising it or having that for different ones.
Okay.
Board Member Greenberg.
I think we're confusing the issue. We agreed to priorities, and one of the priorities that we agreed to was that Dr. Creekard would look into, and his administration team would look into internal processes, review, auditing that issue. So I think all he's saying is at a later time, he intends to present that to us, and at that time, I think is the appropriate time to have that conversation.
Board Member Kravitz.
Were you saying that you were going to post the position?
Well, that's
So that doesn't mean that we're going to be discussing it at a later time, if that's what you're saying?
yes, that's what I did say, that I'm of the position now that we look at the job description, go through the process, looking at the job description, posting a position in the job description. We can certainly have intermediate steps in the meantime. We look at a job description, we come up with what we think as a cabinet, what is the job description, what is the scope of work, and bring that to you before we post it and begin to interview, certainly.
Board Member Kravitz.
Well, I'm just a little confused because 2 weeks ago in a discussion you had, I think it was 2 weeks, possibly 3, you had mentioned something about posting an RFQ for an external, so now we're discussing an internal. So I think there does need to be some discussion about this since there are more questions.
At that time, we were looking at the complexity of having one person who understands transportation and purchasing and human resources and all of those things that we do. And so instead, we thought we would be maybe looking at a series of people that have expertise in those areas. Since that time, I believe that we need to have somebody on site who really learns how we do business and really looks at deeper at the processes that we have, and that would be somebody on staff.
Could I suggest, I think if you want to do an approval of Dr. Creekard's quarterly priorities, maybe you approve the priorities that you maybe understand that you don't have a concern about or disagreement possibly about, and then let Dr. Creekard come back with more information for you to have a full
Right.
discussion about the auditor issue.
I do recall the board discussion, and that was that we were going to get a recommendation with Mr. Gadd and Dr. Creekard giving us a presentation or their recommendation on whether they felt an internal auditor or an external auditor was more appropriate. And subsequently, he's had individual conversations with, I don't know, me, but I don't know whomever else on this board. Michelle, I don't know if it would be appropriate if we put on here that one of his priorities is to make that, or have that discussion about why, or how, and open it up for why he supports what he does, whether it's internal or external, and then move forward from there.
You could certainly do that. Add a priority that Dr. Creekard make a recommendation or come back with more information about whether the district ought to have an internal auditor or auditing department.
Board Member Beckham.
I'll just throw a wrench in here. So as I read this recommendation, I know we're approving the new quarterly, but if you go to the background, it says Dr. Creekard will report on quarterly expectations. So I was under the impression that part of this discussion was that we were getting a report on those first 4 items, which is why I thought you were going through each and every one of those. So there's actually 2 parts to this particular action item in a way. There's the reporting, in which there would be the discussion, which I think is appropriate, the questions that have been asked. And then there's the second part because of what those priorities would be. And so we really can't determine what the second quarterly priorities are unless we go through the first ones. Because we might want to move some of those, we might want to take some off. So I'm just putting that out there. That's how I understood it.
No, thank you for pointing that out. I did not see that was also in there to report on the first quarter. But it is the second quarter priorities that are on for potential action by the board. So.
Board Member Beckham.
So does that mean we can continue to get the update and discuss those? Because depending upon how we discuss them and how we feel the conclusion of those will determine the next action item.
Yes, Dr. Creekard can discuss, and you can discuss what happened with the first quarter priorities. Yes.
Well, I thought I did that, but I'm willing to answer questions that you may have.
Well,
Board Member Greenberg.
I guess my recommendation would then be that either we make it a priority as a subpart or a follow-up to these, that we schedule an intermediate meeting on the solutions or different choices for districts auditing number 3, because yeah.
Board Member Beckham.
I would support that solution because I also was not contacted, so I hadn't discussed this with you, Dr. Creekard, and I get the impression that Board Member Kravitz had not, because she said she was surprised by it, but maybe you did have the discussion. So to me, I am very interested in understanding those differences in solutions. I know that the recommendation or suggestion you came up today was for an organizational auditor. That terminology, to my knowledge, hasn't been used, so I would like to understand it because my question was, how does that differ? What are those responsibilities before I would want to have the board kind of sanction that that's what we're going to be doing regarding auditing. So I really do want to understand what an organizational auditor is. Since the budget came up and it was felt that we didn't have the budget for that individual, I'd like to know what the budgeting is for this and this particular type of auditor, how much that they usually cost and how that differs from what you thought in the past. And then obviously we really want to look at what are those expected outcomes and how are we going to measure those so that we're not just once again hiring a consultant or an outside, even if it's an internal auditor coming in and 6 months down the road, we really don't have anything to measure it by. So I would agree, I would move that and be able to have a deeper discussion and understanding
Board
of
Member Greenberg?
the suggestion.
I just, before we get into editing all this, I want to be really clear that we're approving quarterly expectations and priorities. These aren't the actual actions to be taken. So the priority, the first quarter priority was number 3, solutions or different choices for districts auditing. Number 4 for this upcoming quarter, recommendation on districts internal auditing. I mean, he is saying that his recommendation is an internal auditor, but that's not what that says. I mean, whether it's an external or internal, we're just talking about what those priorities are. So we're not saying by approving this quarter that, because I mean, the wording just isn't that. We're not saying that we are absolutely going to have an internal auditor. He could come to us and all 5 of us could say, we don't want an internal auditor at all. It's just saying that one of the priorities is a recommendation on the district's internal auditing. So I don't think we need to edit this unless we all of a sudden have changed our minds and don't believe that we need any recommendation or any discussion whatsoever on that as a priority is my understanding. Unless we want number 4 for this next quarter to just disappear, there is no need to amend that, because all we're doing now is asking for additional meetings on that topic, which is really for later, but you know.
And if I may, the first quarter, we cabinet, we talked about solutions for different choices of district auditing, and from that, didn't come to any strong solution to bring to you really until recently. And so I thought, when asked what are my suggestions for the next quarter, that we should go to the next step of coming to you with some more hard recommendations, not just the studying of solutions or different choices, but rather to come to you. And that can certainly be come to you with a discussion item on auditing and get more input from you as a whole in a work session. I have absolutely no problem there. I was just trying to move that along a bit from things that we had talked about and thought about as a group, and after listening to the board discussions and thinking about that. So I'm willing to word this in any way that you like. And thank you, Board Member Greenberg. I did not mean to tell you that I was going to recommend something and put you into a corner on this by any means.
So when we vote on this, do we need to change the verbiage, or are we okay, since it's not an action item, to actually hire an internal auditor? It's just his priority.
Yeah, you can make it as it is.
Okay.
That you want Dr. Krieger to make a recommendation in the next one.
Okay. I have a question or a comment on your first quarter as it relates to the marketing aspect. So with the growth schools, as I was going through the Tier 1 schools, I noticed that marketing, or our CIO, has met with the principals, I assume, at some point? Yeah, as I look through here. Yeah. So I just would be curious, as we talked about earlier, and Board Member Greenberg mentioned, that not necessarily a survey, although I do think there's value in that. When I'm talking about marketing, I do believe our principals know their schools. And so I do believe they know why people are coming to their school and why people are leaving their school. They get a fair amount of feedback. So I would be curious to know, not only just in all of our schools, but specifically with the 4 schools we're talking about, what the principals, now this is going forward, would think would help them in the way of marketing. Okay. Just a statement. Any other?
I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on then. No? Oh, are you still on? Okay, Board Member Beckham.
So, because this is the only opportunity we've had to have you report on the quarterly, I do want to comment on number 4. I understand district metrics will be coming October 1st. My understanding of the priority update on thematic goals is that you would come forward with it would be a discussion item, informational item, in which you would actually update us on the 5 thematic goals. So I am still anticipating that to be happening in the first quarter. If we need to move that to the second quarter, then I'm more than happy to do that. But we haven't had that update on the thematic goals. So I can go into more of that after the meeting. But, we did this a year ago, and we had asked for it to come back and have an update, and we still haven't had it. So I'm waiting. And that is more or less what we did in the past, is we sat with the cabinet members that were responsible for those goals, and we went through and, talked about and saw their progress that they were making on what items and what action items and what ones might have changed. And so that's what I was expecting for number 4.
And we did that last December, so it hasn't been a year, but that's when we developed and had a work study session in December.
We talked about it, but we actually we didn't end up actually going through the progress. We talked about it, but that we didn't do it, and that we were going to be doing that this year.
You're right, we didn't talk about the progress. In December, we presented the details behind the defining objectives that where the assistant superintendents all worked on the outlines for each one of the defining objectives.
Right, so I'm still waiting for that update.
Okay, Board Member Beckham.
And the last one is because number 1, I feel that you have gotten that template down, and it was mentioned that we know we have a December 1 deadline according to our policy. I feel like number 1, the continuation of those plans really shouldn't be a priority, because that's already set in motion and we know what's going to be done. That's not going to be taking any more effort, I don't believe, on your part to have that happen. So I am wondering if I would like to replace that particular item. And can I don't know if this is the appropriate time to make a suggestion so that my other board members can hear it. We have a policy, DB, which is our annual budget. And if you go to that, it's very short, it's 3 paragraphs, and embedded in the second paragraph is the second sentence. It says, the superintendent, I think it says shall, something, and publish a budgeting process. The superintendent will publish a budgeting process that seeks, I'm not on. I apologize. The superintendent will publish a budgeting process that seeks and encourages substantial opportunity for public and employee, I'm missing that last, employees setting the budget priorities. In the 2.5 years I've been on this board, I have not felt that I have seen a substantial opportunity for public or the employees, the teachers, the principals to come together, whether it's in like open forums, to really talk about what are the priorities of our budget. And so I would like to see a process put together so that we could maybe have that robust discussion about budget priorities amongst all of the stakeholders, and especially all of our teachers and principals and staff. And so the priority is to be actually putting together kind of a timeline that would start in January, because that budget process, you need to probably have that information by March. And so that's what I'm proposing.
So if first of all, I've always been a firm believer in leadership that you work hard in the background to make it look easy. I will tell you that to do the last 4 learning communities in capacity by December 1 will not be easy. We'll make it look easy, but it won't be easy. There's a lot of work involved in walking those campuses and talking with the principals and moving forward with that. Secondly, the budgeting process, I have no problem with that. If that's what the whole board votes for, we can certainly work on that. I have been involved with that process in years past in other districts. So whatever this is, I see the priorities. My view of these priorities are that they are developed through this process. I make some suggestions, you make some suggestions, and then ultimately I do whatever the 5 of you tell me.
Or the 5 of us do what you tell us. Okay. So, any further questions or discussion? Is it realistic for you?
Which one?
If I understand it, Board Member Beckham was asking for your next quarterly priorities to replace number 1, which is the program facility
Well, we're going to do that,
They're already set to do it, so that's
Right.
why it's not,
but it will be a priority
well,
because we have to get it done by middle of November. So it will be a priority. But can we devise a stakeholder input budget process? I'm sure Mr. Gadd has had those in one or more of the various districts that he has worked in before and has some ideas too. We can do that as well, but so whatever your pleasure is.
Okay. Well, then do you want to make the motion adding that to that or replacing? Board Member Beckham?
I would, Dr. Creekard, what would be your preference? I feel like both are going to get done, so we could just add it to.
I'm going to have to say something.
Yeah.
Board Member Perleberg?
Thank you. I definitely appreciate and understand the sentiment. I do. How do I put this? I am struggling to understand in your mind how you're envisioning a productive, effective process that would actually kind of leave us with like a positive outcome. I mean, and maybe the budget, these conversations, I guess I have PTSD when it comes to budget committees in this district. So maybe I'm, overthinking it a bit, but I'm struggling to envision how our community as a whole discusses effectively the top priorities of our budget versus the millions of priorities we have throughout the district that when you go around and ask, everyone has a different list. So, I mean, again, I'm not saying that the sentiment isn't something I understand, is just wrapping my brain about how that would look and be productive and effective and positive is my fear. So I'll just add that.
Board Member Beckham?
Well, I would, it is in policy, so I'm assuming that there has been, and I don't have, maybe I do have the date of the policy. No. What I have always asked around budget time is how do we talk about what is important to our individual communities, our individual sites, our individual, who actually ends up making all the recommendations for what's in the budget? And I'm always told it comes down to the superintendent, which is fine. And it's not Dr. Creekard, it's that function of the superintendent. That is what I have been told. And I believe why it's in policy, is because the teachers that are at the site, the educators, the staff might be able to see some priorities or programming that maybe we should be doing. And I just feel that in the time that I've been here, we have not gone out and asked. And maybe it's because there's been no budget committee when I was here.
Well,
but maybe this school district at the time when you were here, the budget committee was not effective, but I just can't imagine that there are districts out there that don't do effective budget committees or are asking our teachers and staff and our communities what their priorities are.
Mr. Gadd would
and
like to
then
weigh
we
in.
gather
Okay.
that information and then we
Right.
discern it.
Right.
It's not that you just
Well,
take everybody and it's like
yeah.
chaos.
But I guess I'm questioning too. I mean, when I hear that discussion or that question, where does all this come from? My perception has always been that the key component to these questions of budget are our site leadership, is our principals at our sites that are connected directly with our educators and our teachers, our educators and our parents and their community. And it's one of the reasons certainly our past board was so focused on empowering our principals, because it is those decisions that ultimately make or break our school. So I guess that's the lens I always look at it from. If we're not having those conversations in our district with our principals and our site leadership, God help us. But
Mr.
no, I'm
Gadd,
going to let Mr.
why
Gadd
don't
speak.
you
Sorry.
weigh in a little bit here, please?
Madam President, members of the board, comments on 2 or 3 subjects you've been discussing for what they're worth. First off, budget committees tend to revolve around budget deficits. And budget deficits revolve around not having successful elections on the override. And you have to cut $7 million. Where are we going to take $7 million from? So it revolves around needing to take something out of the budget rather than shuffling necessarily anything inside the budget. The other thing you have to understand is 85% of that M&O budget is staff. It's salaries, it's standards relative to the number of staff. Utilities is 10 and 5% supplies, and it's over. So when you study the budget, it's going to be looking at positions and which ones do we think are more important than others, and that discussion is a difficult one, as you can imagine, and that's why most districts don't do an in-depth discussion of that unless there's a real need, and the real need would be a shortfall in funding, either because of enrollment or because of an election. That's number one. Number two, the subject of auditing, in my mind, you can approach it one of 2 ways. One is, I want to focus on specific areas that I have a concern about. And so you tend to hire someone, I'm on the external side now for a minute, you tend to hire someone who has had a great deal of experience in that area, knows what they're looking for, and can give you recommendations that are reasonable. Or you do an internal one, which tends to focus more on financial, because that's their background usually. And so you limit yourself a bit in terms of what can they do with transportation, what can they do with facilities, because it's not an area that most of them have likely dealt with. They've dealt a lot with, and a lot of them are CPAs, they've dealt a lot with accounting and subjects like that. So you have to kind of decide, is the focus on a general array of items all the way from special education to transportation, and you want to pick and choose from that list which ones you want reviewed. That, in my mind, is more of an external. If you're focused on the district's internal financial operations, you're concerned about accounting, you're concerned about auditing, because you got a bad audit, those things tend to be an internal auditor that probably would help you the most with that subject. So that's, forgot the third one almost. I don't want to speak for the superintendent, but I can tell you that when you're looking at quarterly goals, and we have a number of them apparently planned for each quarter, that person's going to be an awfully busy person trying to keep up with a 3-month turnaround from one goal to another, on which there are 4 of them already. And Dr. Creekard has a lot of energy, and I applaud him for that. But, I mean, I couldn't resist saying that's quite a tall order to put on someone 9, 10, 12 goals in a year. If you did this quarterly and added them all up, I don't know anybody who can carry that load. So that's my view of it.
Thank you, Mr. Gadd. I understand the intent, and I do, because I meet with people community members on a regular basis who don't understand why, in this economy with this budget, et cetera, things aren't being addressed at the school or whatnot. We all hear it, that we're doing a great job with our budget and we are listening to our principals, but we will meet with, various people that will say, this is going on, why isn't the money available, et cetera. So I understand the intent. I think it may need to be refined a little bit more if we were to bring it forward. This is just my opinion. And consider it for the next go-around maybe, but that's just my personal opinion, because I think that it is necessary to discuss it further. So, any other questions? So am I leaving them as is, or would you like to make a motion now to add them to?
If I have a quick question.
Okay. Board Member Perlman.
Okay, so going back to 3 solutions or different choices for districts auditing, that language as it sits, I'm fine. I'm just wondering what you have in mind. Do you want to speak to us individually, or do we need to set a meeting information discussion item where the board sits together and, kind of gives our different perspectives, because
Right.
of course I have a perspective on this.
So I think both. I
Okay.
think it's important that you have an opportunity back and forth, one-on-one or two-on-one with me, but I think also the community needs to hear the thinking of the board when we make a decision like this
Right.
as well. So I think both.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Board Member Beckham.
When I made this suggestion, what I asked for was an outline, or to actually establish or create or develop what it would look like. I didn't have anything set in my mind, even though I was asked that question, so I just spontaneously came up with an answer of what it could envision like. So I guess I just wanted to go back and just say, to rephrase if it was misunderstood, that the point is that it would be a priority in that it would be looked at, something that intentionally would be thought about because it happens to be in our policy, and that the timeline is, this would be the time that it would be decided what that outline would look like, because you would need to start in January. And that since these were priorities for through December 30th, this would be the time that you would do it. I wasn't trying to set what that would look like, whether it would be a budget committee or whether it would be public forums, or, which I kind of think took the look of a free-for-all. It wasn't meant to look like that at all. It was to say, our policy asks that we get, and I'll say it again, and I just want to make sure that we're doing that, and if we believe we are, it would be coming back with the justification of how we encourage substantial opportunity for our public and our employees to help set our budget priorities. That's all I'm looking for. And it doesn't have to be in this priority list. I think that since I've set it out there, I'm hoping that it's understood that it's something that's important. It's important also, not just because I said it, because it sits in our policy. So that's all.
So Dr. Creekard, these are priorities that you are committing to. So I need to find, are you comfortable with adding another one, or would you like to put this, on for discussion or thinking about for the next set of priorities. Where are you on that?
I think and thank you, Board Member Beckham, I think as outlined, or not to use the word over again, but the process that you talked about, I think is doable to set an outline and to look at what it would look like starting in January, and we can certainly I'll discuss with Mr. Gadd and others about the various ways that we can get stakeholder input. And we do have one stakeholder input group, and that's the Bond Oversight Committee that has helped us with as we go through that and to make sure that we are on track. But so we can look at what it would look like for the budgeting process. I think we could do that.
So then will you make the motion, since you have the verbiage there, because we're going to move to approve the quarterly goals as I see it for the second quarter with the additional added, correct?
Or did you just want to kind of put it on your plate and not have it be part of the priority?
That's always preferable.
Well, and I'm not opposed to that.
Sure, okay.
And I apologize, they're
Yeah.
priorities, not goals. Okay, so please move and then read
You want to read the four? I'm not
No,
adding mine in.
No, you're not adding yours in. Okay, then I move to approve action item 11C, the quarterly expectations, the priorities for the superintendent for the second quarter of 2019-2020. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Greenberg seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. No? Oh, sorry. Okay. So,
Travis voted no.
did you?
No, I voted aye.
Okay.
Oh.
Motion passes 5-0. We move on to 11D, possible approval of the 2019-2020 goals for the General Counsel. Do I have any questions or discussion?
Yes.
Okay. This is for Ms. Marshall.
I will
Did you have
just,
anything to say?
for those who might be riveted to this discussion, explain that I took
Are
your
you scared?
comments from the last board meeting and attempted to revise the goals that deal with public records and conflict of interest procedures. I got some feedback about whether the deadline dates should be moved up in terms of transitioning what I think we're calling administrative tasks to other people or departments in the district. My initial response to that suggestion is I'm happy to move it up, but I'm not so sure the recipients of those transitional tasks would be ready sooner. And so my suggestion after talking with Dr. Creekard about that was that perhaps summer would be an easier time for transition. That said, I have been working with, for instance, Debbie Spalding in IT on tech solutions, and with Dr. Bowman and his team on the conflict of interest procedures and what belongs in legal versus human resources. So it's not that I haven't continued to progress, but I'm just not sure about moving the deadline.
Board Member Beckham.
I had made the suggestion, and I am going to support my initial thoughts, and that is that I would like 3 and 4 to, under A, say report progress by December 1, 2019 for a transition by January 1, 2020. I think waiting a whole 10 months to having our general counsel continue to do administrative tasks is unnecessary and just kicking the can down the road. And I think that we have room in our budget if we need to hire some new people to put that in place by January, then that's what we need to do. Please bring that back to us. But I think that this transition is just too important to have happen so that those administrative duties are passed along to a more appropriate departments, and then that will provide our general counsel the ability to plan and mitigate legal risk and liability. And that's what she is capable of doing and is hired to be doing.
Any other questions, discussion?
I have a comment.
Dr. Creekard.
I'd love to. Well, you're saying
Board
you're
Member
saying you
Kravitz.
want a deadline of what again? January?
Right, so what would happen is that this administration function would be in a different department starting January 1. That's 4 months from now. It's public requests.
Has that discussion happened as to how that shift is going to go, and whether we need to hire somebody? Because if we are discussing hiring somebody, that could take some time to find the right
We have not talked about the hiring. We know that that's a possibility if it moves, whenever the deadline is. But I would caution you that there is a nexus between the quarterly priorities that we just discussed for me and moving Mrs. Marshall's goals to transition the public records requests and so forth to these departments. The departments that most likely be the greatest affected by that would be the Human Resources Department, number one, who in this next quarter is going to be heavily involved in the administrative evaluation process from my goals. It's going to be the Finance Department, and that's going to be heavily involved in the district auditing process and what we do with that, as well as by the way, the stakeholder budget process. All of these departments are heavily involved during the year. They have their calendar for what they do. In January, there is a heavy emphasis on staffing the schools from HR, of what that staffing and projections and all that looks like. There's a heavy emphasis in the Finance Department in preparing the budget. The first budget presentations require quite a bit of preparation, and that's happening in January. And so we don't disagree that this is something that's important and should be done, but I'm saying give it the summer when schedules are different, people are prepping for the next year. If we have to move people around from offices, or if we have to hire somebody, that's a much better time to start a new process of this magnitude, rather than in the middle of the year when everybody is heavily involved in those normal processes of running the school district.
Any other comments or discussion? Board Member Beckham, did you know? Board Member Perleberg?
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I would absolutely agree that I think we all understand the sense of urgency. We all really do. Considering where we've been in this district for years, I would hate for our sense of urgency to cause our district to do something too soon, too fast, and end up with a poor product. That's my concern, is that if we as a board set a deadline saying hell or high water, we're having it done now, we could end up with possibly poorly trained staff trying to do jobs that are very, very important. So that's my one concern with setting that. That date, that hard date. But I agree, there's urgency in it. I also keep feeling like when these conversations come up again, one huge burden is, in my understanding, an IT question, a technology question. Do we need software that helps your department and helps our district with accuracy in FOIA requests and that type of stuff? And I always feel like that is something that we could possibly do quickly, or at least.
She is.
And I have identified at least two, possibly three types of programs that I've asked Debbie to help me figure out what works with our system and what we can do. And they also appear to be very inexpensive
Okay.
So, but also, you know, I just had a conversation with her today where she said, how soon do you want this? I'm short of staff. So, you know, those are the realities. She's a great colleague, but she can only do so much herself. So, you know, we have been talking about it. I'm very hopeful that at least one, if not two of those will be in place in the next few months, but, you know.
And I just don't want that to get lost, that was also kind of embedded in this goal and is a task that you're on, so those are my comments. Okay.
And I would say, you know, in this process, it's important to have a discussion with the person that is supposed to achieve these goals to see if they're realistic and that there's buy-in, that they are achievable. And in your case, I understand that we would really want you to focus on your core skill set and not necessarily administration types of things. I would also trust that you would give an opinion, which it seems like you are, to understand what we're trying to accomplish, but also make this transition of the administration part as seamless as possible. And what I'm hearing from you is the outcome would be better if it was done in the summer, that you feel that's more of an optimal time, knowing that there is a sense of urgency. If you can get it done sooner rather than that, great. And is that the case?
And really, that is not about me. It is about the people that I would be.
But there's a part of
teaching
you
how to do
training them,
and identifying, you know, who's the point person in your department and things like that.
Because you're passing it off.
And let me just clarify, I don't think I was asked to completely pass off public records, because that's a different discussion.
Right. I mean, you have a piece that you have to keep, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, for instance, a records management software. I'm looking at a deduplication software, which I didn't realize existed before last week. So there's things like that we are identifying that can help us. But, you know, that is part of improving the process.
Okay, any further questions or comment? All right. I make a motion to approve action item 11D, the approval of the 2019-2020 goals for the General Counsel. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5. Nope. All opposed?
Nay.
Board Member Beckham opposes. Motion carries 4-1 with Board Member Beckham opposing. Okay, moving on to our future items. Do I have any requests for future items? Board Member Greenberg.
I think, given that our main job is to hire a superintendent, I would request that we think about scheduling some more meetings where we can discuss the key qualities and characteristics we want in a superintendent and those parameters as we move forward, because we have 2 new board members. Priorities have changed, and I just think that it's very important that we do not wait, because now I don't know when this discussion will be that we just tabled is, but you know, our next meeting isn't for 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks after that. So time flies faster than anything. So I would request that we start putting those meetings on the books and getting together and discuss those options, since we're not having a search committee. And then I guess back where I am, if we could schedule a meeting at some point, I don't know what's going on, but if we could schedule a meeting at some point to discuss the meet and confer process. This is now, I think, like the 4th or 5th meeting where teachers have showed up. If we could actually maybe discuss that at some point, but that's all from me. Thanks.
Okay. Any other requests? Board Member Beckham?
Just drawing a blank here, because I supported, the search committee, I support that we try to get this on October, and I know that part of it was having us talk with the search firm, and so that I can commit to it, and I'm assuming that those who want to speak will commit to doing that very quickly, so that we can have it in October. I support having that the 1st of October as well.
The search firm.
The search, to have
that
the
is
search
set-
firm come back up.
Yeah, tabled for the next special meeting. And then I think Board Member Greenberg is suggesting that even beyond that regardless of the outcome, that we discuss as a board more of what we would like to see in a candidate, et cetera. Okay.
I totally support that.
Okay, yeah.
The other item, which I think I have been asking for quite a while, is is site council policy coming back. I know we did discuss it, and then it got tabled, and so I'm just trying to find out when it's going to be brought back. Thank you.
Any other board members?
Site council policy.
We were
okay.
changing, we were discussing, we had tabled it from the spring, and Michelle was working on it. Okay. Okay, moving now to the dates of our upcoming meetings. The next one, Tuesday, October 1st, 2019, 5 p.m., the special board meeting at the MDA. Tuesday, October 15th, 2019, at 5 p.m., a regular governing board meeting at Coronado High School. Do I have any governing board reports? Board Member Perleberg? Oh, you were trying to. I'm happy to report the crosswalk started at Tonalea today, so you all know. Okay. And the other report is November 2nd, we have our teen kind of town hall, which is, I hope everyone is getting the word out. What is the word we were using regarding the climates? Letting our students discuss how they feel at our actual schools right now and the challenges that they're facing. So I hope you all come. It's at Arcadia at 2 p.m., November 2nd. Right? Okay, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned at 7:03 p.m.